Thank you for listening to this episode, and follow the podcast on social media by finding at prestigious pod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Beane, at Chris Beane Official, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com. Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website. This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Beane. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Michael Unbroken, a beacon of resilience and empowerment. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be here with you. I appreciate it.
So, Michael, let's bring our listeners in and tell them a little bit more about you and what we're going to be talking about here today.
Yeah, well, my background today, I am an author, speaker, coach, and podcast host, and I've helped thousands and thousands of people overcome childhood trauma to build confidence and have the life of their dreams.
Wonderful. So, and I know you've faced unimaginable challenges throughout your life, from abuse, homelessness, self-sabotage, addiction. How do you find strength and resilience to overcome from these obstacles and reclaim your power?
Yeah, that's kind of like the question, right? And I think so much of the journey is your willingness to acknowledge the reality of where you are in the moment. And not until then will anything actually change. And I think a reason why is because so often we get caught up in this idea that life isn't for us, right? It's for somebody else. And I come from this background of being homeless as a kid, being viciously abused, deep, deep poverty. I mean, I'm talking about so poor, I had to steal food to survive. I have family in prison for life. My three childhood best friends were murdered. Like, dude, I mean, I come from nothing. And it wasn't honestly until I hit this deep, awful rock bottom did anything actually change. And so I kind of, and this is kind of a weird thing to say, but I hope everyone hits rock bottom. I hope you hit the point that sucks so bad that you have to look at your life and be like, fuck, I need to do something different, because that's the place where you're going to have to actually become the version of you that you know is inside. And that's where the resiliency lives. That's where the growth lives. That's where the opportunity lives. And if you can wrap your head around the idea that where you're at today does not have to be where you are going to be tomorrow, there's a sense of freedom in that. But you have to have a game plan. And so when I really started tapping into when I really started tapping into this idea about no excuses, just results, right? This is kind of the moniker that has shaped my life for almost 15 years. It was really looking at all the areas of my life where I was playing a victim. And I'll say this because I think it's very important. I'm not taking victimhood away from people, Chris, by the way. Like, if your life was horrendous, I get it. And I understand. And I don't want you to ever feel like I'm like, pick yourself up from your bootstraps and like go and take on the world, because it's much more difficult than that. But the reality is, at some point, you do have to look at your life and you have to decide, are you going to be a victim or not? Because by all stretches of the imagination, life is really this thing where if you can grab it and almost in a literal sense, form and shape the clay of your existence into what you want, then you can actually build and create it. Um, Bob Proctor, this line he says sits in my head a lot. He goes, if you can see it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. And I've always just felt like I was destined for more. And even as a kid, being homeless, stealing food to survive, getting bounced around place to place, having learning disability, our water getting turned off, heat turned off, electricity turned off, our getting evicted more times than I can count, living out of literal trash bags, never meeting my father. All of these things, I was always like, I'm going to do more than this one day. And I didn't for a long time. Right. And so then you insert kind of the hero's journey that I went on. But ultimately, you have to believe it, and the resiliency is a byproduct of your belief system and your actions. I'm not inherently resilient. By the way, I'm very lazy, to tell you the truth. But I've written 4 books. I've been on New York Times billboards. I've had a number one podcast. We've coached over 3,000 paid clients in my programs. But like, I'd rather get high and play video games all day. So, the game of life is the decisions that you make, like point blank, like what are you going to do? And that's where the resiliency misnomer comes into play, because people are like, I'm going to be resilient just because I think so. I'm like, no, you're actually going to be resilient because you're going to force yourself to do things you don't want to do when you don't want to do them.
All right. So a couple of questions that I have for you from there. Um, do you think it's important for people to reach that all the way, just the bottom of their breaking point, in order for them to then start to appreciate the small things? And from those appreciation of the small things that are actually going in the right direction, it allows them to look for the positive things, so they find more positive things? Or is there something else that's to that?
Um, so I've had a lot of conversations with some of the most famous and influential mental health professionals in the world. Pete Walker, Dr. Gabor Mate, Mariel Bouquet, Caroline Leaf. I mean, Tom Bilyeu, the list goes on and on and on. We all agree one thing: you're gonna have to touch the bottom if you want your life to change. Because that's the only place where people are really gonna do it until you're not in discomfort anymore, right? Of the reality of the moment. Because you know as well as I do that there are people in the world right now who, if they could just look at their life and be honest, they would change it. They're morbidly obese, they're smoking 2 packs a day, drinking themselves to sleep, cheating on their partner, massively in debt, family doesn't talk to them, has no friends group, isn't taking care of themselves. By the way, all of those things were me when I was 25 years old. Dead serious. Right. And so, if, which what I did, I looked at it and I said, man, this is really bad. Like, it's only going to get worse if I kill someone, which between a lot of my behaviors, it probably wasn't that far away. Between the violent outbursts that I had and my propensity to do drugs, like on a long enough timeline, like this was going to go down. But luckily, I hit this moment where I had to have this stark realization that I had done all of this to myself. And this isn't to not look at the responsibility of my parents and the people who raised me and the community that I come from, because certainly that's a nature versus nurture conversation that leads us down this path. But the truth of the matter is, like, looking at my life at 25 years old, I was 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep, cheating on my girlfriend, $50,000 in debt. Life was not good at all. And yet I kept pretending that it was until I didn't. And in that rock bottom moment, the thing that transpired and came from that, which has truly empowered me, is I had to take responsibility for my life. A part of the taking responsibility, which is massively uncomfortable, by the way, because now once you do this, you have to pay the taxes for all the things that you've done. And that sucks and it is not fun. But what comes from it is now this awakening into this idea, if you can hold on to it, about giving yourself permission to be great by leveraging gratitude for the things you have done and recognizing, holy crap, you made it through a lot, but you're refusing to settle. So let's see what you can go and do and give yourself appreciation along the journey. And that's probably been the biggest thing for me that's helped me in my journey, is just being like, I know I come from nothing. Holy shit, I'm amazing. Look at what I've done. And I think that if you can sit in that, and that's not an egoic thing, it's just factual. And I think that there's a beautiful lyric from Kanye West, even though I know he's very polarizing. It says, I'm a star. How could I not shine? And I think that even in the darkest of moments, you've got to give yourself some accolades because you've made it this far. But as I say, you haven't come this far to only come this far.
Okay, so it's almost like hitting that rock bottom gives you an opportunity to shed the stories that were placed on you from everybody that helped to bring you up and to kind of lead you to where you are. hitting rock bottom allows you to shed those stories, and you either continue down that road just all the way at the bottom, or you shed those and then you can rise up from there, knowing that those are not necessarily who you have to be. You can design your life to be something better than what it is at that time.
If you have the right tools, support, mindset, game plan, frameworks, actions, community, and willingness.
So how can somebody who's at rock bottom find those things and start to see some sort of a light, maybe not from themselves, but something, that they can head towards, that will kind of point them in the right direction?
Well, I think a lot of it is who has done the thing you're trying to do. Who else has had a complete, utter rock bottom? Who else in the world has walked down this path in this journey of life and been in a position where life sucked tremendously and they pulled themselves out of it? Because like I always look at it like this, there's a person one step in front of us that we are learning from, and there's a person one step behind us who is learning from us. And that's kind of like this secular thing experience, at least in my life it's been. But you have to have a plan. Like I I'll give you a quick story. So I'm 29, about to be 30, and I am just deep in trying to do this work. But life isn't really changing. Like I'm going to therapy and my businesses are kind of doing okay, and my relationship is not really changing, and my friendships aren't really growing, and my body isn't really, and all these things. It's kind of like, man, like I'm doing the work, but it's very mediocre. And so one day I'm on Google and I'm like, and keep in mind, this is a long time ago. I start searching childhood trauma therapists because I was like, okay, I got to go deeper with an expert, somebody who specializes in this. Because you're talking about a childhood of homelessness and abuse and poverty, and my mother cutting my finger off and being homeless, and all of these things that are part of my story. I was like, the guy who just happened to go to college because he wants to help people who didn't have that bad of a childhood, I don't relate to. I need to go find the guy who has walked down the paths and gates of hell and has come out the other side. That's the guy I got to find. And I fucking end up finding the guy. He's in Portland, Oregon. I'm in Indianapolis. And I'm like looking at my life. I have no money. My car has been repoed. I'm barely surviving. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to Portland, Oregon. I'm going to do this. I call the guy. I go, hey, man, this is where I'm at in life. I think you can help me. He goes, okay, but I don't this. And again, mindful of the time, he goes, I don't do virtual. You have to come to my office. I'm like, fuck. All right. Well, I'm going to go sit down with my girlfriend and tell her what I'm doing. I'm going to leave that relationship. I'm going to sit down with my friends. I'm going to tell them what I'm doing. I'm going to leave my city. I'm going to sit down with my siblings. I'm going to tell them what I'm doing. I'm going to walk away from my family, and I'm going to rent a car. It was a Chevy Malibu, and I am going to drive it to Portland. I only have enough money to get there on the day I'm supposed to get there because I don't have another single penny beyond that day to cover another day of the rental car. And I'm going to have to stay in the Red Roof Inn along the way. And if you've ever been to Red Roof Inn, they're freaking disgusting. But don't sue me, Red Roof Inn, by the way. That's just my own experience. And so I tell everyone I have $500 cash in my pocket from a few things that I'd sold. I got in a rental car. I started driving across the country. I had no place to live. I did not know where I know not a soul in Oregon, by the way. But I was just like, I have to do this. Like you have to have this like almost insane willingness to do whatever is required to have the life that you want to have. And if that person is 2,000 miles away and only helps people in person, are you going to get in the car or not? And so for me, the thing that transpired from that is like I'm on this crazy adventure of the willingness. That's all it was. I didn't even know if it was work. If it would work, I just had the willingness to try. I was like, fuck, this is insane. Like, I even thought it was insane. All of my people were like, you're nuts. What are you talking about? Like, you can't be serious about this. And I'm like, oh, I'm serious. because like nothing in my life is moving at the pace I want it to move. And the work isn't working and I'm stagnant and I got to go to the next level. So that's what I did.
So
And the reason that I'm
do you think
go
that
ahead.
part of that growth that happened after that happened because you separated yourself from the environment that you were in previously and you had to go out and be on your own and kind of reinvent yourself as something different because you left behind your past?
So it's a great question. So as I was preparing to do this, and I mean, I did this within the course of 10 days. Like I made the decision and I moved quickly. And that's a big thing that people need to do. They need to move fast. So anyway, as I'm telling these people in my life that I'm doing this, they're like, "What are you running from?" I was like, "You got to understand, I'm not running from anyone. I'm not running from anything. There's nothing left for me here. And what I'm doing is I'm running towards myself. I'm going to go on this journey of self discovery and really root in and figure out who the hell I am." And it's the scariest thing that we do. And so, did I reinvent myself? No, not necessarily. I just tapped into the truth of who I was. And that truth, what was so interesting about it was I was this hurt, lost little boy who was struggling immensely to feel like a human being because of the amount of abuse that he went through. And doing this work of going and finding the person that I once was to help me is the only reason I'm probably here today, because this man literally changed my life. I mean, I changed my life because I had to fucking go there and do the things and show up and do the work and pay him the money. But like the knowledge and information that he gave me transformed me. And that's what I do with people who are like what I used to be. I give them the knowledge and information to help them transform. I don't think people, generally speaking, are reinventing themselves. I think what's actually happening is that they're owning who they truly are. And that's a reflection of the deep work.
It's like they're cutting down the stories that have been placed on them that they've believed for however long, and they can allow themselves, their true self, to shine through without that extra baggage that was put on them by somebody else or even from themselves earlier in their journey.
Yeah, entirely. And what it is so I do not believe that the worst part of childhood trauma is the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, or sexual abuse. I believe what the worst part of it is the theft of people's identity.
Mhm.
Like I have these scars all over my body, these cuts, these burns, these things that existed. But the hardest part of all of it was feeling like I wasn't a human being. And this is the experience that so many of my clients relate to. They come in and like, "I don't know who I am." And I go, "I know you don't, because it was stolen from you. It was stripped from you." Because in the moments in which, as a child, you're supposed to have agency and sovereignty, the ability to learn and make mistakes and grow and have conversations and be nurtured in a way that creates a space for you to not be perfect or not be punished because you have a want, need, or interest. If that's stripped from you as an adult, you have no capacity for being a person. Like you just don't. And so you become super codependent, or you become a yes person and a people pleaser and a doormat, or you go the opposite direction like me and you're very chaotic and you're violent and you burn everything down that you touch, even though you work your face off to build it. Right. And that's kind of the thing, is like we create our realities in the current moment based on the emotional home in which we allow ourselves to exist. And so if your emotional home is this place where you're full of anger or guilt or resentment or shame or being ostracized and invisible and not speaking up and being a doormat, you're going to recreate that in your adulthood because it feels safe and natural.
Mm.
And when you attempt to do the opposite, to become like the fullest version embodied that you can be of who it is that you are, that feels insane. And it feels like this is a lie and it feels like this isn't true until you come to sit in the truth that what you're actually doing is you're creating yourself.
And
And that's where the healing journey exists, in that window.
well, and that's interesting that you say that too, because it is, from my understanding, that your internal world, your emotional world, the thoughts and ideas that you have is a direct reflection of the outward world that you live in. And if your internal world is filled with chaos and all of these negative things, then the external world, the world that you live in, is going to be like that as well. The environment, your internal environment shapes your external environment. And until you can change your internal environment, your thoughts, your emotions, how you think about yourself and interact with yourself on an internal scale, then the external portion isn't there. So talking about, that those people don't know who they are because it was stolen from them. But that's a really profound and I think almost disarming way, and definitely a change of mentality for them to think about the experience that they've went through that led them to the point that they're then willing to meet with you.
Yeah. Well, and I think a big part of it is that when you can allow that to become truth, which I believe it is true, then it's kind of like, if you ever have something stolen from you in your life, eventually you just let go of it. You're like, oh man, that sucks. I can't believe that got stolen from me. And then you go get another one, or you build another one, or you create another one, or whatever. And that's how I look at this process. I go, all of my childhood was stolen from me. I have maybe one good memory of all of it that's not tainted by something dark, because there's a lot of darkness that I went through. Things I don't, dude, there's stuff I will never talk about publicly because it's so awful. Right? I mean, like you let your imagination run wild, and it was a part of my experience. And so when I think about and I look at this reality of shaping and creating who we are, it's pretty true. You get to build and create who it is that you choose to be. And it's not that you don't have emotions about this experience, because you certainly do. But one of the things I teach my clients is control your emotions and you control your life. Because we are not our emotions, we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings. Those things exist with us momentarily, but like, are you happy right now for something that happened 30 years ago? No. Are you sad right now for something that happened 2 hours ago? Maybe, but not in this moment. And then you learn how to just kind of control it and look at it and be kind of biased towards your own emotion and look at them and go, is this true? Yes or no? No. Great. Okay, cool. Then why am I allowing it to be in my way? And it's not that you don't cry and have happiness and joy or whatever comes along in the emotional journey, but I try to be cautious of leveraging my emotions as a part of my identity. This is why when I hear people say I'm sad all the time, I'm like, no, you're not. You're not sad all the fucking time. You're sad some of the time, but not all of the time. Because if you're sad all the time, you'd probably kill yourself because it'd be insufferable. You're just somebody who happens to be sad, like every other human that's ever walked the face of the earth. You mean you have emotions? Holy shit. The game, though, is not letting those emotions be what control you, instead, you controlling them.
So, all right. So, Michael, you've dedicated your life to helping to empower these people who've been through these really, really challenging times. I wonder, can you share some insights to how you approach, and you've already done this a little bit, but how you approach uh, these individuals to help them heal and to reclaim that power, to reshape and remold themselves as they move forward?
Well, I create a container for truth first and foremost, because the reality, as much as people are hiring me, I'm hiring them. Because I only want to work with people who are serious about this shit. Because working with me is not easy, because it's going to require you shedding your identity. It's going to require you getting pushed, probably more than you've ever been pushed in your life. And it's also going to require you probably not liking me a lot. Like, and I'm okay with that, because the thing is, I'm going to show you things that you don't want to see about yourself, because in those things you create a framework and a baseline for the transformation. Most people, they don't want to actually transform their life. They just don't. I've been doing this for a decade. I've coached thousands and thousands of people. Over 10,000 people have read my book. Millions of people have listened to my podcast, blah, 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 blah. All that shit, right? What I can tell you with a full conviction in the truth is that what I help people do is to build confidence. That's it. At the core of it, That is the thing that I do. I help people get to the point where they can look in the mirror and be okay with the reflection, despite the abuse, the neglect, the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, sexual pain that they've been through. And in that, what I'm really doing is I'm helping them uncover, I'm showing them the path. So let's pretend here for a second, Chris, we're walking down a tunnel. This tunnel's pitch black, but very, very, very far down the tunnel, you can see just a small glimmer of light. That small glimmer of light is the future that you're after. Where we're at today is the beginning of this tunnel, and it is a long motherfucking journey from where we are to where we want to go. But what I do is I get to do something very special, and that is hold people's hand as we walk down the tunnel. Because I have been down the tunnel many, many times over before. So I know the pitfalls and I know the spots where things are going to happen where you might take a step backwards. And I know all the things that will transpire as we walk down this journey and how to help you to the best of my ability avoid many of the things that I've seen thousands of people avoid because I've been able to guide them down the path. And eventually, on a long enough timeline, you come out the other side into that light. I shake your hand and I say, see you later. Go change the world now. Do your thing. And that to me is what it's about. I'm not going to drag you down the tunnel. I'm not going to force you to change your life. But when you're in fear and you look to the side, you're going to know that I'm there right next to you. And that's what I do as a coach. I'm not anybody's fucking savior. I'm not anybody's hero. I'm not knocking on anyone's door for them to change their own life. But if they're sitting and they're looking at it and they're like, I know that my mom or my dad or my community or my teachers or my stepdad or my uncle fucked me up so bad that I'm barely surviving life and I need somebody to help show me how to get out of this, I'm your guy.
All right. So, all right. I'm trying to think of how to formulate this question. If I you've went through some really traumatic times in your life, then now you meet with these people who are going through these traumatic times or have also went through traumatic times in their life, and you're helping them to reclaim their selves and move forward in the new way. Through that experience, how do you not how do those thoughts, emotions, and feelings that you've went through not come back up to the surface as you're interacting with these people who have went through similar things or even worse, perhaps than what you've went through?
Yeah, it happens. I'm a human. I'm not a robot.
Yeah.
And when they come, I work with my therapist or my coach.
Hmm.
I don't pretend that I'm not impacted by things. What I will say, actually, just truth be told, 10 years into doing this and hearing some of the darkest shit you could ever imagine, like it does not hit as hard as it used to.
Hmm.
So I can sit more presently than ever before, because it's like now I just am able to very much compartmentalize the experiences of others. In the beginning, and part of that was just in the learning of doing this and not really understanding how to frame all of it, because like I didn't set out to be a coach, dude. I don't want to do this. Did not want to do this. 0 fucking% chance. Like there was never a moment in my life where I was like, you know what I want to do one day? I want to go coach people who got super fucked up as kids. That sounds great. And so like by proxy of this journey, I've had to learn how to do this effectively, to not only create a container for my clients, but to create a container for myself. I don't edit them. I never tell them, don't tell me a thing. I don't ever tell them how to talk or share their experience, but I just sit and I hold present with it. And then I give them thoughts, feedback, and the truth about how I believe that they transpire and move through these experiences. I mean, just last night, I had a very dark conversation with one of my clients. And then I took 20 minutes. I shook off my own emotional response to it. I got in the car and had a date with my girlfriend. It didn't ruin our night. You know what I mean? And that comes with experience. I mean, it's probably the same thing most therapists go through, right? Now, the difference between me and them is I try not to sit in that emotional state with my clients longer than absolutely necessary. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to move them into action oriented and framework discussions about how they navigate the experience that they're having. And so a big part of it is like, honestly, a lot of times we're not talking about emotions. we are talking about the thing that happened, but we are talking more deeply about what they do with the thing that happened. And so, because that's where a lot of my energy sits today and not in the emotional space, it actually does not impact me that often. In fact, it's very rare today where I have to really take a step back and go, whoa, that triggered me. So, I think that just is a part of the learning. It's part of the process. It's part of just understanding more deeply how to connect at this professional level and be human without letting it impact me emotionally.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Beane here from the Prestigious Initiative. If you're looking to level up your life and unlock your full potential, I've got some exciting news for you. My recent guest, Joel Gandara, has an incredible program called 31 Days to Become a Better Man. Joel has packed years of life-changing insights into this easy-to-read book, guaranteed to help you rethink your shortcomings and redefine what it means to be a man in today's world. But that's not all. Joel also offers powerful one-on-one sessions and group classes to guide you on your journey. And he has a special offer for the Prestigious Initiative listeners. You can get $19.99 off the program when you use code PRESTIGIOUS at checkout. Don't wait. Take your first steps towards becoming the best version of yourself today. Visit 31dailychallenges.com and use the code PRESTIGIOUS for your discount. And now back to the show. Well, okay, so I guess that kind of goes along with like exposure therapy. And so you've been exposed to these things continually over and over again, that it has less of an impact on you. And then I guess I would ask then, perhaps then, as your clients are going through and reliving these things or thinking about these things, talking about these things, I suppose that also is a form of exposure therapy, because I'm sure they're visualizing it as they're telling it to you, not necessarily reliving it, but at least thinking about it through their own experience. And then perhaps that gives them an opportunity to shed some of the negativity that's associated with those often negative events.
Well, and one thing that I have as a requirement of everyone I work with, they must have a therapist.
Hmm.
It's I will not work with anyone who does not have a therapist in parlay with the work that I'm doing with them. Because one of the things is, wait, we're not, generally speaking, talking about the past as much as you might think, believe it or not. Because you hear, oh, Michael's a trauma coach, he's like the go-to guy in the thing, and like people come to him because of the past. What we're really doing is people come to me, Kristen, they're like, my life is so horrible, and every relationship I touch, I cheat. Every time I get money, I spend it. Every time I try to get in shape or healthy, I destroy the progress. Every time I get a job, I ruin the promotion. Like, we're in the now. And what I do is I go, how do you think we got here? And then we go back to third grade, or when they're 9 or 16 or 23. And they go, do you think that experience of that moment impacted this experience you're having right now? And they go, I never connect to those dots. And I go, I know, because you can't see it because you're close to it, but I see it because this is what I do all day, every day. And then I go, let's talk about that experience of the past in a space of which we are doing it from a evaluative perspective, not an emotional perspective. Not that emotions don't come up, but we're looking at it from an evaluation. What are the facts of what actually happened in this moment? And how do we believe that those facts have impacted the present fact? Like, because it's all just in truth, right? Because you can't argue the truth of the reality of the facts. We could argue feelings, right? We could argue emotions. We could argue a lot of different things about the process that the life experiences we live have on us, but you can't argue the fact. Like, I can't argue the fact that you have glasses on right now. And you could not sit here across from me like, I don't have glasses on. I'm like, I'm looking at your fucking face. You have glasses on. What are you talking about? And then people go, oh my God, you're right. I have glasses on. And now they've made that connection. And in that connection, that's what the growth is. That's what the transformation is. It's the acceptance of the reality of the journey that has led to this moment, because now it's measurable. You can measure fact. It's very analytical. When you look at it fact-based, and yes, the emotions exist, which we deal with those emotions as they come. When we have the fact, we can look at it very objectively and say to ourselves, this is because of that. And now you go, okay, if this is because of that, do you want that to continue to be the thing that impacts your life negatively until the day you die? And they go, no, that really sucks. I don't want that. And I go, I know you don't want that. And so now we know it. Now it's measurable. Now we create a game plan around it. And with a game plan around that, we create actions, we create accountability, we create a container to actually walk the path of the journey to the transformation based on that information, based on fact that the reality is you're wearing fucking glasses. And that's where people's lives change.
So, okay, I know that our brains do almost a hilariously poor job of factually remembering past events. We have all this overlay of emotions, all this overlay of perceived intention. How do you combat that? I guess as I'm asking this, I'm guessing probably as the outside source, you have an opportunity to shed different light on it because they're telling you from their perspective, but you're able to think about it from a different perspective because it didn't happen to you. Am I kind of on the right track there?
Yes. And what is the most significant thing that you remember about your childhood that you're like, I 100,000% remember this to be true?
Oh, me personally?
You personally, yeah.
Um,
Not necessarily bad, but just something you remember from childhood. You're like, that's a very distinct moment of time in my life that I remember like it was yesterday.
mm, yeah. So I started martial arts when I was young, and I can remember the day that I started, and I know that had a significant impact on me, even today.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then that's fact. The nuance of it, what kind of shoes were you wearing that day? Like fucking light up LA gears. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Pointless. It carries no validity in the conversation about the fact of the experience. And what I'm trying to find out about is the fact of the experience, not the fact that your birthday cake had 9 candles instead of 10 and that made you feel invisible as a kid, right? What I'm trying to find out is how you actually remember the moment and the impact that it had on you, because those are really hard to argue that level of fact. Now, because of the nuance and the way that our memories change and our nervous system and all of the things that like become protective mechanisms in our journey, one of the things that we do really well is we forget bad things, right? But you don't forget the most significant moments of your life. This is why people remember where they were on 9/11. This is why people remember where they were the first time Trump got voted in to be the president. This is why people remember the day that Princess Diana died. This is also why people remember the first kiss, why they remember the first time they had sex, why they remember when they fell in love. Like we remember significance. So if it's insignificant, I would argue it probably doesn't apply into what we're trying to do. And thus, your brain is just storing that and then creating and crafting that into whatever it is when you go to pull it back out of that file shelf. And you're like, I put that file in there and it was blue, but now it's purple, but it's close enough. But you remember the significant things. And that's the game that we're playing.
So, all right. So, Michael, I know advocacy plays a crucial role in creating awareness for support for childhood trauma survivors. How do you use your platform to voice advocacy for change and support for survivors worldwide?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest thing that I try to do is tell my story in a way that empowers people to understand that it's safe to talk about this. Because Chris, I'm 6'4". I'm covered in tattoos, gold nose ring. I wear Jordans. Like I'm from the hood. People do not look at me and go, "That's the trauma hood child coach." You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And so, I'm super fit. I work out all the time. I run 7-figure businesses. I travel the world. I have fun. I live a life that's unbelievable, to tell you the truth. Even I don't even believe it sometimes. And the advocacy comes from me and knowing that some guy or some woman somewhere in the world who had a similar background as me can hear one of my stories and be like, I feel safe. We donate, yes, we do all those things. I speak at schools all the time for free. I donate thousands of copies of my book every single year for free. Dude, I've coached so many people for free, I've lost count. It's ungodly number of people. And the advocacy part to me is giving people permission. I could start a giant charity and blah, blah, blah and do all that shit. Sure. But I'd probably be broke in the process. Most people don't actually want to do this work because it's hard and it's dirty and it's scary. But for the people that do, when they come across a blog or a book or a podcast or a seminar I've done or whatever it is we've created, they feel like they're not alone. They feel like somebody finally gets it. And to me, that's a bigger advocacy that I could do than almost anything, except for because I love talking at schools. Right. So outside of that, like what I'm really trying to do and create is permission without victimhood, right? Which is like this really interesting lane to walk down because I want people to have permission to heal, to walk down the journey, to do this hard, difficult, uncomfortable, oftentimes very gross work, but not be a victim in the process. And I think one of the really unfortunate elements of the conversations being had publicly right now is that there's a lot of victimhood being placed out into the world. The woe is me, and this happened, and so everyone should fucking come and cuddle me because I had a bad child. And it's like, dude, you weren't a child soldier in Sudan. Like, I don't know if it was that bad. And of course, that's me being a bit facetious here. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what I hope people will take from this is just understanding like that even though these horrific things have happened, they don't have to be defined by them. And that to me is the greatest sense of advocacy I could ever leave with this world.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Um, your podcast, the Think Unbroken podcast, I'm sure has made a significant impact, millions of downloads, listeners worldwide. What do you hope listeners from the podcast take away, and then how do you measure the success of that show?
I'll start in reverse. No one's ever asked me that before. I measure the success by the willingness that I have to keep doing it. To be honest with you, like I don't care about the number of downloads. I don't care about how famous the people are. I don't care about the sponsorships. I don't care about any of that. I care about one thing because it's my project. It's the thing that fills me up. Success to me is I want to do it again. I want to do another episode. I want to sit down and have another conversation. That to me is a success in it. And you know this because you're a podcaster, right? The secret of podcasting most people don't know is they're just simply an audience member getting to listen in on a private conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very self-serving thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't argue that that's true. Because, dude, I wanted to talk to Tom Bilyeu and Tim Story and Gabor Mate and Anthony Trucks and Jenna Kutcher and Amy Porterfield and Vishen Lekiani and people who they don't do podcasts, but they do mine. And it feels good. And I'm not going to fucking lie about that, right? Because there's people like, I want to make the world a better place. I'm like, yeah, that's why I write books. Like, to be honest with you, if you read my book, that book will change your life, right? The podcast, though, is me wanting to become a better version of me that you get to sit in on, right? So it's a little insider secret. What do I want people to take away from it is ultimately recognizing that the journey is here for everybody who's willing to walk the path. All of these people, like, think about this. I've had Vishen Lekiani on, right? He's top of mind, so I'll share. He built Mind Valley, $1 billion company where he travels the world and he helps people on their journey. And he is one of the smartest business people and leaders in the world right now. You know, he sits on boards with some of the most impactful and powerful and famous people on planet Earth. And we didn't talk about business for one fucking second. And neither did any of the other people who have been on my show who are unbelievable business people who run multi-billion dollar companies who are changing the world constantly as entrepreneurs and leaders. And we don't talk business. And that's what I want people to take away from it is that we're talking about real life shit. Not that entrepreneurship and business isn't real life shit, because trust me, it is. I run multiple companies. It's like what my day to day is. But it's like we talk about the moments of the rock bottoms. We talk about the moments when people are in suffering. And look, here's the truth about it too. Sometimes these conversations are some of the last conversations these guests have. We had Dave Hollis on the podcast right before he died. And that man, that conversation he and I had was to this day, the most powerful conversation I've maybe ever had with a human being. And my audience, they got to hear that because I think, 10 days later, he was dead. And so it's a human experience that I want people to come in and have. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit too tactical and practical, depends on who I'm speaking with. But as a whole, we're talking person to person. And I believe, because I mean, do I listen to my show? Yeah, but I'm like in it. So it's not the same. But we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reviews, and people have DM'd me and emailed me and just said, thank you for doing this. And as long as that keeps happening, I'll keep doing this.
Okay, so that's I was gonna ask that if you've had people that have shared the experience, the positivity that has happened from either your books, your shows, or anything that in between there.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean,
well, I was gonna say with that, do you have those somewhere? And if or when you are going through a tough day, a tough time, do you have those to reflect on?
so again, I'll answer in reverse. Um, Understand what I'm about to say as a tool. It's not meant to be a negative thing that I'm about to say. I don't care.
Hmm.
I don't care what people write about the book. I don't care what people write about the podcast. I don't care about any of that shit. I don't care if people love me. I don't care if people hate me. I truly don't. I don't. When I go look in the mirror, I'm okay with who I am. Period. That's it. And so someone's interpretation of my art, I don't give a fuck. And that gives me a lot of freedom to keep creating it. But here's what I will say. On the podcast, we've had like 500 reviews. I've only ever had one-star review. All the rest of them are 5-star. Of my book, hundreds and hundreds of 5-star reviews. There's one 2-star review, and it's somebody who's like, great book. I hate his grammar. I could never read it. I'm like, okay, so what? Right. And it's like those things that I think are very interesting. But neither the 1-stars nor the 5-stars I care about. I don't even read the reviews. I don't even know what they say. What what I do get from people, what really hits me are the DMs, are the emails, are the voice notes, the videos, and the testimonials of their story and their journey through the art that I've created. That shit really gets me. We had a client, I have a client who's in one of my programs, and we're at the end of one of our sessions, and it's a group session, and she said, hey, before we leave, I just like to share something. And I go, sure, share away. She goes, when I started this program, I was about to break up with my boyfriend. I got fired from my job. Nothing was working. And I was kind of desperate. And she goes, the job's going great. I'm healthier than I've ever been. My boundaries are better than they've ever been. I'm having hard conversations and keeping people accountable. But all this led to one point. And she goes, and the reason I want to tell you all this is that my boyfriend proposed to me. And I'm like, that's why we do it. That's why I do all this for moments like that. Or the DMs of, hey, dude, thank you for sharing that. That really made me feel like I could do this work too. And I think so much of the power of what this is those moments. It's not the reviews and the 5-stars or the 1-stars. It's like the real human on the other side of the conversation who reaches out and they're like, thanks.
All right, so two kind of things. One is the definition that I like to think about when I think of leader has to do with what you were just speaking about. And it's being a leader means having the courage to take a stand for what you truly believe in, despite what others may say or believe. It also means living your life with compassion for others and assisting others in doing the same through your actions and words. And by the way that you're speaking about the show, by not caring about what people say, good, bad, or otherwise, that means that you are in it to share the message because you know the value, the importance behind the things that you're saying. And then the other thing I'm going to couple that with is the idea or mentality that you're using to call your work art. I think is wonderful. As a podcaster, I've never thought of this as a piece of art. But as you are saying that, and I've heard that you say that a couple times here today, and I'm trying to make sense of that in my brain. It absolutely is art, and being the host, as you know, you get to guide and shape what that art piece looks like on the other end. And you talked about it is self-serving, being doing a podcast, and it absolutely is. I think about this as the college course that I wish I could have had when I went to college. Because
Mhm.
oftentimes in school you learn these really useless things that they're telling you, oh, you have to do this and do that. None of that was very important. None of that is very impactful. None of that really is in my memory. Much of it is not in my memory here today. But the impactful conversations that I've had with guests, the willingness for them to share their stories and to feel like they want to or need to answer the questions that I pose is really helpful to shape and guide that piece of art that gets put out at the end of that process. And knowing that I had a firsthand experience in that, in shaping it and molding it, and the thought that other people can go along for the ride on that, that is enough. I don't necessarily need to rely on external praise or external, people calling me out otherwise. Doing it, getting to meet with people, getting to have that conversation, to learn, to experience, to grow together. And if people get something out of it from the other end, super. If they don't, that's okay. It doesn't matter because I'm here for me and to share the experience with the guest and for them to share their experience with me. And I think that is a piece of art that other people are able to witness and behold after the fact.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the same as I was in the Louvre a couple years ago, and the line is just so insane for the Mona Lisa. And you're like, that dude never thought that would happen. He's like, I'm just gonna make my art. And that's what I think this whole not only podcast is, but I think all entrepreneurship and business is art. And I'm a creative. Can I do the tactical things? Yes, I'm masterful at it. But I'm a creative. I I don't share this a lot, but I'm an award-winning wedding photographer. My first business was that. I run the creative in my retail company with my business partners. I do the creative work. As a podcast host, coach, and author, that's creative. Like my art is always trying to keep myself in my zone of genius. Like I can do the tactical things, I can build the frameworks and the automations and the funnels and the blah blah blahs. But dude, this is where I'm gold. This is my place where I take my paintbrush to canvas and I go, this is what I want to make. And I think it is art. And I think that this whole journey is art. I think all of life is art. But we get so stagnant in the creative process because when's the last time you colored? You're like, when you were 10. When's the last time you played on the playground, right? When's the last time you enjoyed life and it wasn't so serious? And it's not that it's not serious because I do serious work here. I literally save people's lives, but it's art to me. The conversations I have with them are paintbrush strokes on their canvas. And I think that if people can understand that about what they want to create, what it actually does is it gives you a freedom and understanding that art is foundationally interpretive, because what you may see in the Mona Lisa may not been the intention of the creation.
Yes, agreed. Hey, Michael, I gotta say, your story, your is a testament to the power of resilience, courage, determination, and I gotta ask, what message or advice would you offer for our listeners who may be struggling with trauma or adversity right now?
Yeah, I mean, everybody always asks me that, Chris. And the one thing that I will always tell anyone is like, until they're ready, they're not going to do the work. Their life can be on fire completely, but as long as one pillar of that house is still up, they're not going to do it. I wish to God I could mitigate the risk of the ultimate rock bottom for people to create transformation in their life, but I just have come to find that you can't. And so my hope is for the people who are touching that, or they're on the cusp of it, or they feel it, like, come and join a program. Come and do something with Think Unbroken. Listen to Chris podcast. I'm sure you've had other incredible guests on your show. Start to educate yourself and formulate a game plan for getting yourself out. One of the things that people do not do, they do not framework and map the life that they want to have. And so life is happening to them constantly. And they don't have a direction, a guide, or a path or a framework for what they want. Think about this for a second. If you have a job, you have a job description, and you have an expectation of the reality of what that job entails and what your responsibilities are throughout the day to day. And you go to work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, or however much you work, blah, blah, blah. And you know what you're doing. But the second you leave work, you have no idea what's happening in your life. And it is the most asinine thing about the world we live in right now, that you could go into a framework for the majority of your day and then come out and have no life by design. And so if you're like, fuck, my life is messed up right now and I don't know what I'm doing and things are not working, you need a game plan. And sometimes that game plan is renting a car with $500 in your pocket and driving across the country to Portland, Oregon to go find a therapist.
So, Michael, if the listeners wanted to get in contact with you or learn more about you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I give away hundreds of copies of my book all the time, every single month. If they go to book.thinkunbroken.com, they can get a free copy. And I'm on social everywhere at Michael Unbroken.
Thank you. Michael, I want to say again, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights, and your inspiring journey with us here today. And remember, listeners, whatever challenges you face, you have the power within you to heal, to thrive, and to become the hero of your own story. Until next time, stay resilient and keep striving for greatness.